Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. It's Olly here, and well, thrilled to have you. If this is your first time here and you're learning a foreign language, make sure to hit subscribe so that you get these episodes delivered directly to you. If you happen to be listening on the website as well, it would be better for me and for you, actually, if you search for I Will Teach You a Language in your podcast feed, whatever app you use, whether it's Spotify or the Apple, the iPhone podcast app, whatever it is. Go and search for the I Will Teach You a Language podcast on there, because it would be, it's just more convenient to listen to be honest. And with that, I thought I might actually ask you guys a little favour, because it's been a long time since I've done this, and it does help, and I just forget all the time. So, can you guess what it is? I used to ask this all the time, and I've kind of forgotten in recent months and years. But anyway, I would be very, very grateful if you could leave me a little review of the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Now, can you review podcasts on Spotify? I have no idea. Whatever app you use to listen to this, would you mind shooting me a quick review? It's really, really helpful, because it helps to show the podcast people, whoever they are, that people listen to the show. And so all you've got to do is literally open up the app that you're listening to this, like right now, go into the show, so choose the show. You might have to pop out of the episode and into the kind of show menu, the I Will Teach You a Language show menu. Scroll down until you see something that says rate and review. And if you could leave me a little review, I'd be very, very grateful. I go back and read all of them. So I'll definitely look for yours, and I might read out some nice ones from time to time. But anyway, it takes 15-20 seconds for you, but it's really powerful for me, because it just helps to get that little bit of extra exposure, and helps me to stay motivated to keep recording these podcasts. So if you have been getting any value from these, then I really appreciate a quick rate and review. Again, it takes less than a minute. You can do it from your phone, and you'll have my undying and enduring love and respect and thanks and gratitude. You get the idea. All right then, here's Lewis.
Hi Ollie, thank you so much for your help. I'm Lewis from Watford, currently learning Italian. I've started a language exchange on Skype, and it's very encouraging and I enjoy it a lot. I've been told to work on my pronunciation, especially with my R's. Could you please advise me on the best course of action? Grazie, ciao.
Hey Lewis, thank you very much for a cool question. You're not far from me, actually. I live in London, North London. I don't know if Watford is considered North London or not. I guess it's kind of northwest, isn't it? But anyway, good to have a question from closer to home. Okay, so Italian. Now, for those of you who are new to the podcast, I did a project to learn Italian last year. I documented the whole thing on YouTube, and you can find that if you go to Olly Richards. Go to YouTube and search for Olly Richards Italian. You can see exactly how I learned Italian, and in quite some detail, probably far more detail than you're interested in. But that's there anyway for your viewing pleasure. And Louis, I'm thrilled to hear that you have started a language exchange, because it's like one of the best things you can do once you start speaking. Everything else sort of gets better from there. So well done, and for taking the lead, because I know it can be a bit like nerve-wracking as well. And what's happened is that your language partner has suggested that you work on your pronunciation, which is completely normal. So assuming that you're at the early stages as well, then it's a great time to do that as well, because pronunciation is always better fixed early than late, whilst you've got a kind of fresh, clean slate, as it were, and you can imprint the language on your mind. So, pronunciation, you know what? I've actually been thinking for some time about making a pronunciation course of some kind, but it's kind of, I haven't figured out the best way to do it, to be honest with you, because it is one of those things that's quite tricky. And I think there are a few different areas that come in here. So one of the principles, and this is a principle I always mention whenever we're talking about pronunciation, because it's just, it is the kind of universal truth. Pronunciation always begins with awareness, which is to say that in order to pronounce something correctly, you've got to be able to hear it. And what that means is, if you're studying in a very traditional way, where you're doing a lot of textbook exercises and stuff, you're probably not spending that much time actually listening to Italian. And it's important that you start to spend as much time as possible listening to Italian, because it's in the exposure to the language that your ear is going to get used to picking up the sounds of the language, right? So if you can't hear those sounds, the different sounds of the language, you're not going to be able to produce them yourself. All right, so first thing is to start listening to a lot more Italian. Beginner stuff is fine. What if you've got beginner textbooks that come with dialogues and things, you can start to listen to those. We have Italian Uncovered coming out in a couple of weeks' time, actually. You can go to italianuncovered.com for that, although that is aimed at beginners, though, so it might be a bit below your level, Lewis, if you've been learning for a while. But one of the features of Italian Uncovered is that right from the beginning, we give you tons and tons and tons of listening, because that's how you develop that strong pronunciation. So you've got to spend a lot of time listening, and it's really important that you kind of focus on trying to pay attention to the different sounds and noticing how they differ one from the other. Now, as a fellow English speaker, Lewis, you may well be kind of subject to a phenomenon that I think us English speakers have more than other people might. And this is the kind of embarrassment factor, the weirdness factor that we English people seem to have about speaking other languages. And I think it stems from our sort of problematic relationship with the French, and the fact that the way that the French speak in terms of their intonation is very different from us. Like, we are kind of very monotone in the way we speak with not much expression. But in French, like, the French have a whole sort of suite of sounds which in English come across as very arrogant. You know, the kind of French sounds with this is anyone who's speaking like that in English like comes across like it doesn't sound good, right? But it's totally normal in French. But as a result, like us English speakers, we have this kind of embarrassment when we start learning a language like French, because we have to come up with all these sounds that sound a bit weird in English. That and the fact that, you know, the kind of stiff upper lip and all of that, right, kind of makes it difficult for us to really step into the shoes of another nationality in terms of the language itself. And so that just, for us, that makes it all the more important to spend lots of time listening, because that's how you're going to just acclimatize your ear to the sounds of this new language. So you've got to kind of be willing to really imitate what you hear, you know, and try not to let feelings of any kind of feelings there beneath the surface like affect. If you hear an Italian speaking in a very expressive way, like, you mimic and imitate that as closely as you can, because it's really important to sound convincing in Italian, to kind of, you know, open your mouth and go up and down and like properly speak in that way. You know that kind of stereotype of an Italian speaking with all these big hand gestures and things like that. And you've got to get into that character, because otherwise you're always going to come across like an English person speaking Italian, basically. So that's really important. So in terms of actually how to do it mechanically, having a teacher is great. Your conversation exchange person might be able to do that as well, especially if they have some teaching experience. So they can help you hopefully identify like some of the places where your pronunciation might be a bit off. They may or may not be able to do that. I mean, a good teacher will be able to do that. It can be one of the things, like, you know, I really don't think you need a teacher to start learning a language. But the one thing that teachers can be very good for is pronunciation, because you kind of get a bit of personal attention and like, fix that stuff from the beginning, right? So your teacher or your conversation exchange partner might be able to help you with that. But one of the things that I think is really, really helpful is to record yourself speaking and then listen back. So you can, for example, just literally turn on your iPhone voice recorder and then just record yourself having your Skype call. Right, so when you're talking on Skype, assuming you're using your computer, then just get out your phone and just record yourself at the same time and listen back. It's a bit painful, because it's always a little bit different to how you think it's going to be. You sort of speaking, you're thinking you're sounding like really Italian, and then you listen back and you're like, oh my God, this is nothing like what I thought. It's like I'm just not articulating myself. It's quite painful, but it's a brilliant way to, again, raise that awareness of how you're actually speaking. So you could do other little exercises like have set some, write out some phrases, and then get you pronounce it, and then your exchange partner pronounces it, and then record that and listen back to it, look at the difference, and really try to just do everything you can to just copy that and imitate everything about the pronunciation. Remembering that pronunciation is not just about the individual letters and sounds of the language, but also about the intonation. So how your voice rises and falls over the course of a sentence. Like this sentence I just said, kind of drops at the end. My sentence is now dropping at the end, like in a downward curve, you see. But it's not always like that. Like that sentence, it goes up. It's not always like that. So this is intonation, and the more you pay attention to that, and the more you kind of embrace that in your own speaking, these are all essential parts to speaking the language properly. So I would definitely record yourself as much as possible and go back and listen to it. The other thing that is a problem, especially for English speakers, is vowels. Now, when I've worked with a lot of English speakers, whether American, Canadian, whatever, as well as British, Australian, we all have the same problem, which is we tend to swallow our vowels. That's because in English we have this thing called a schwa, and a schwa is like a kind of a sound that replaces the sound. So, for example, in the word mother, the letter at the end of mother is actually an e. So it should be so a Spanish person that says that sees that word will pronounce it moder, my mother, right? Because the e that they see should be pronounced according to them. But of course, we don't pronounce it like that because we have this letter called a schwa, which is like a sound, which replaces lots, and not always, but will often replace any vowel which is not in the stressed part of the word. So, for example, mother, the stress is on the first syllable, mother, ma-ther. The second syllable of mother is unstressed. So because you've got a vowel in the unstressed part of the word, what that does often is it changes to a schwa. So we actually, although we have 5 vowels in English, E, A, I, O, U, we don't really use that full range of sounds often, because we just substitute it for this schwa sound that's just a kind of catch-all like admittedly, that's another one. Again, the A at the beginning, it's not admittedly, we just say admittedly, like that. So the point being, you should pay attention to your vowels. So when you are reading words in Italian and you've got these different vowels, A, E, I, O, U, you have to really pronounce the hell out of those vowels. Like really articulate them. A, E, O, U. Like, again, it sounds weird to us because we're not used to being so articulate, right? But you've got to do that. And the vowels are often a dead giveaway for native English speakers. So that's a little tip there for you to focus on. All of this stuff, again, you've first got to start by listening an absolute ton so that you can recognize these sounds. And then secondly, you've got to, I would recommend you record yourself and listen back to try to just start to notice where the way that you're speaking in reality differs from the way that you think you're speaking. All right. Now, as for the R, my advice for the R is just don't worry about it. The reason being, you're going to find it difficult. It always takes time for everybody. It took me 2 years to get my r. It took me 2 years. I tried to do it with Spanish initially, couldn't do it. Got really frustrated. And then one day I was in the shower or something and it just came. Just came out, and I could do it. I realized, oh my god, I've just done it, and then I just did it like 100 times to cement it in my brain, and was walking around for the next week just going in case I forgot to do it. You can speak Italian perfectly well without rolling your R. Your teachers will tell you, your exchange partners will tell you that that should be a rolled R, but it doesn't matter. You will never be misunderstood because you're not rolling your R's. Okay, to get as close as you can and just don't let it bother you. That's really the best advice. But in terms of actually technically how to produce the sound, the thing that really did it for me was the understanding that it's not so much about the position of your tongue, although that is important. Your tongue has to kind of be pointing upwards towards the palate. But the thing that really produces the roll is actually the volume of air that's passing through your mouth. So the single most helpful thing you can do to get better or to get closer to being able to roll your R's is to just send more air out through your mouth. Kind of breathe faster or more heavily, if you like. Because if you try and do it with no air passing through your mouth, there's no energy, right? There's nothing to kind of to respond to. But if you can kind of do a kind of big chesty breathe out, like you're kind of emptying your diaphragm. So don't breathe from your neck, but breathe from your stomach. Practice kind of doing this big belly breathe. And then once you've got used to that, then start to put your tongue into position, and then just try everything you can to just like try and get it to move, to roll. It won't happen straight away unless you're very lucky. So you just got to keep going. All right, tons of little tips there. I hope something in there helps you, Lewis. Good luck with your Italian. If you would like to leave me a question of some kind on the topic of the show, then you can go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask, and there's a widget there where you can leave your question. Now, at the end of every episode, I like to leave you with a resource of some kind on the topic of the show. And last year, I published a book of Italian short stories with Teach Yourself. And not just Italian, we've also done French, German, Spanish, Russian, and English. And as you know, 16 more books are coming out this year. So why am I telling you this? Because the audio is also available for these books. So you may or may not be an owner of one of these books, and you hopefully knew that the audio is also available. But for some reason, I always get emails from people saying, "Olly, I loved your book, but can you please make audio?" And I reply by saying, "We have audio. It's very well produced, and it's been available the whole time. So go and have a look for it, and you'll find it. It's on Audible, iTunes, wherever you go and look for it, you will find it." And the way this relates to today's episode is obviously the book is completely narrated, so that is tons of listening practice, and especially if you are at a kind of A2 to B1 level, so you're kind of a post-beginner or advanced beginner level, then these books are as good a way as any to start to get really good listening practice. We have top-level professional narrators narrating them, and they speak and articulate very clearly. So it's a great way to wrap your ear around the language. So if you would like to get one of the audiobooks, then you can go to iTunes or Audible, and you can search for Olly Richards short stories, and they will come up. We've got a few different ones. You might have to scroll through them now, because I think still like the old editions are still kind of mixing up a little bit with the new editions. But anyway, they're there if you look hard enough. And if you get it and you like it, let me know. I always like to get feedback from people. And if you hate it, let me know too, because if you do happen to hate it, it's actually quite useful for me to know why. But you won't hate it. I guarantee you'll love it, especially the Italian one. I really like that one. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Show notes for this episode will be at iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 300. And yes, I am aware that it's episode 300 and that we haven't done any kind of big bonanza show for the 300th episode like we did with 100 and 200. The honest reason why is that I've just been too busy to put something together. But in spite of that, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your support over the last 300 episodes. It's a hell of a lot. I surprise myself that I've managed to do it, but I am very happy that we've come this far. I'm grateful to have so many listeners and to have all these great questions coming in. Still can't believe when I started the podcast, I worried I wouldn't get enough questions. And now I'm like 6 months behind. Who would have thought? Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you back for another 300 episodes very soon. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. And here at Story Learning, everything that I do is powered by stories, whether that's writing books, teaching lessons, crafting courses. My mission is to help everyone succeed at learning a new language through the power of story. And we now have comprehensive language courses in over 15 languages, from Spanish to French, Korean to Japanese, and across all levels from beginner to mastery. And you can take a 7-day free trial of any of these programs by visiting storylearning.com/courses. I've poured my heart and soul into creating these courses over the last 10 or so years, and we've helped tens of thousands of new students achieve their dreams of learning a new language, all through the power of story. So go ahead and take a free trial. There's no commitment. You can try out our method for free. See if this can also be the breakthrough for you that it's been for so many other people. storylearning.com/courses.